I'm Dennis, 62 years old, a retired firefighter living in suburban Chicago. I never thought my own son would reject me on Christmas Day. Standing there in the frigid cold, I stared in disbelief as Michael blocked the doorway. "Dad, you're not our family anymore. Please go away," he said coldly. Behind him, I caught my daughter-in-law Amanda's smirk as she watched from the hallway. The pain was unbearable, yet I felt an odd calm wash over me. Before I tell you what happened after I made that one crucial phone call, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved unconditionally. My relationship with my son Michael used to be something I treasured more than anything in this world. We became especially close after my wife Sarah passed away from breast cancer when he was just 12. Suddenly, I was both mom and dad to a grieving boy who needed stability more than ever. Those early years weren't easy. As a firefighter working 24-hour shifts, I had to carefully arrange my schedule to make sure I could take Michael to school, attend his soccer games, and be there when he came home. I remember the station chief working with me to swap shifts so I wouldn't miss Michael's middle school graduation. My colleagues with kids understood completely what I was going through. Every moment I wasn't at the station I devoted to Michael. We spent weekends fishing at Lake Michigan, where I taught him how to bait a hook and the patience needed to wait for a bite. Sunday afternoons were sacred for watching Chicago Bears games together, cheering and groaning at every play. I taught him how to change oil, fix a flat tire, and eventually how to drive in my old Ford pickup. Summer nights we would sit on the porch, Michael asking questions about life while I tried my best to fill the void his mother left. "Dad, do you think Mom would be proud of me?" he would ask sometimes. I always assured him Sarah would be bursting with pride at the thoughtful, intelligent young man he was becoming. Getting Michael through college became my mission. I picked up extra shifts, worked holidays for the bonus pay, and saved every penny possible. No vacation, no new clothes, no unnecessary expenses. Everything went toward his education fund. Some of my colleagues thought I was being extreme, but I knew education was the key to opportunities I never had. When Michael graduated with honors and landed a job at a prestigious law firm downtown, I felt like I'd finally fulfilled my promise to Sarah. Our boy was going to be more than okay. I remember standing at his graduation ceremony fighting back tears of pride. Several of my firefighter buddies attended too, having watched Michael grow up during station visits. Unlike some of my coworkers who complained about distant relationships with their adult children, Michael and I maintained our close bond. We spoke several times a week and he would visit at least twice a month for dinner. I always kept his favorite beer in the fridge and made sure to cook his preferred meals. Our Christmas traditions were especially meaningful. Each year we would bake cookies using Sarah's old recipe watch Die Hard, which Michael insisted was the best Christmas movie ever, and exchange one meaningful gift rather than many expensive ones. I still have every gift he gave me displayed proudly in my living room. Everything was perfect until Michael met Amanda 6 years ago. Looking back now, I realize that was the beginning of the end of the relationship I had worked so hard to build. I'll never forget the first time Michael brought Amanda home. She pulled up in a sleek BMW, her designer clothes immediately making me conscious of my modest home and casual attire. Michael had mentioned she came from money, but seeing her step carefully across my cracked driveway, I realized just how different our worlds were. Amanda was undeniably beautiful with perfectly styled blonde hair and an impressive education. She worked at the same law firm as Michael, though her position was secured partly through family connections. Her father, Thomas, owned several businesses and was a major client of their firm. That first dinner was uncomfortable from the start. Amanda barely touched the pot roast I'd spent hours preparing, asking if I had any lighter options available. She glanced around my living room with thinly veiled disapproval, asking Michael later within my earshot if we could meet at actual restaurants in the future. When I mentioned my 30-year career as a firefighter, Amanda responded with, "How quaint. My father always says blue-collar workers are the backbone of America," in a tone that managed to sound both condescending and dismissive. Michael laughed nervously, something I'd never seen him do before. Within months of dating Amanda, Michael began changing. Our weekly dinners became monthly, then sporadic. He stopped coming by to watch Bears games, always having some work function or event at Amanda's parents' home instead. When he did visit, his calls would inevitably come earlier than planned. "Sorry, Dad, Amanda made dinner reservations," or "Amanda's parents invited us over last minute." At first, I made excuses for him. He was building his career and a new relationship. Of course, things would change. But when Michael started criticizing things about me that had never bothered him before, I realized Amanda's influence went deeper than just his schedule. "Dad, maybe you should update your wardrobe a bit," he suggested after Amanda commented on my comfortable flannel shirts. "And have you thought about renovating? This place looks pretty dated." The house he grew up in, the home filled with memories of his mother, suddenly wasn't good enough. Their wedding was an extravagant affair at a lakeside estate. I felt completely out of place among Amanda's family and friends who spoke of summer homes and investment portfolios. During the reception, Amanda's mother, Patricia, cornered me, glass of champagne in hand. "Michael tells us you were a firefighter. How wonderful he was able to rise above such humble beginnings," she said, each word dripping with condescension. I smiled politely and excused myself before I said something I'd regret. Later that night, I overheard Amanda talking to her mother near the restrooms. "Don't worry about Dennis," she said. "Once we have kids, we'll naturally have less time for extended family. He's really Michael's weak spot, but I'm working on it." When I confronted Michael about it the next day, he defended Amanda immediately. "You misheard, Dad. Or maybe you misunderstood. Amanda really likes you, she's just not great with expressing it." From then on, Michael started taking Amanda's side in every disagreement. When I mentioned our fishing trip tradition, he said it wasn't sophisticated enough for someone of his professional standing. Our Bears game Sundays were replaced with art gallery openings and wine tastings with Amanda's friends. The final blow came when Michael announced they were buying a house in an exclusive neighborhood and expecting their first child. "It's perfect timing," he explained. "We'll be settled before the baby comes, and it's close to Amanda's parents so they can help with childcare." The unspoken message was clear. They'd be closer to her family, further from me. In that moment, looking at my son's excited face as he talked about building a life that increasingly excluded me, I realized how much ground I had already lost. But I still couldn't imagine how much worse things would get. Despite the growing distance between us, I was determined to maintain a relationship with Michael. If adapting to their lifestyle was necessary, then that's what I would do. I bought new clothes nicer than anything I'd owned before spending money I'd set aside for home repairs. I watched YouTube videos to learn about wine appreciation and proper etiquette for formal dining. I still remember practicing with chopsticks for weeks before a dinner at an upscale sushi restaurant Michael and Amanda had chosen. My hands, calloused from years of physical work, fumbled with the delicate utensils while Amanda exchanged knowing glances with her friends. When Michael and Amanda found their dream home, a 5-bedroom colonial in an exclusive neighborhood, they mentioned struggling with the down payment despite their combined salaries. Without hesitation, I offered my retirement savings, $85,000, nearly everything I had set aside for my future. "Are you sure, Dad?" Michael asked, seeming momentarily like his old self. "Of course," I assured him. "What else would I use it for? Family comes first." Amanda barely thanked me, merely nodding and saying they'd pay me back when convenient. That money was never mentioned again, and I never asked about it. Some things are worth more than money, I told myself. When my granddaughter Emily was born, I experienced a joy I hadn't felt since Michael was young. Holding that tiny bundle, I saw Sarah's eyes looking back at me, and I vowed to be the best grandfather possible. I bought every baby book I could find, learning about modern childcare practices so I could be helpful. But my enthusiasm quickly met Amanda's restrictions. I was only allowed to visit on specific days with advance notice. "Emily is on a strict schedule," Amanda would say. "Any disruption affects her development." The toys I carefully selected were dismissed as too simple or not educational enough. Amanda preferred expensive European brands I could never afford. Once I brought a handcrafted wooden train set that had taken me weeks to make, only to later find it relegated to their basement storage room. My visits became increasingly supervised. Amanda or her mother would hover nearby, correcting my way of holding Emily or feeding her. "Studies show that's not the optimal method" became a phrase I dreaded hearing. As Emily grew into a toddler, I noticed Michael and Amanda would often cancel our planned visits at the last minute. "Emily has a play date," or "we've been invited to Amanda's cousin's lake house." Several times I discovered through social media that the family had taken vacations without mentioning it to me. Once I drove 40 minutes to their house for a scheduled visit only to find no one home. When I called Michael, he apologized profusely. "Sorry, Dad. Amanda's parents surprised us with tickets to a children's concert. I meant to call you." Despite these disappointments, I persisted. I sent cards for every holiday, called regularly, even when my messages went unanswered, and never missed sending thoughtful gifts for birthdays and special occasions. Each time I hoped for a change, for Michael to remember the bond we once shared. Last Christmas, they had invited me for a brief morning visit, but Amanda spent the entire time on her phone, while Michael seemed uncomfortable and distant. This year, I was determined to make things different. I spent months planning the perfect gifts, a handmade dollhouse for Emily that I'd crafted in my workshop, rare first edition law books for Michael, and even an expensive silk scarf for Amanda. I believed, perhaps foolishly, that the perfect gifts might finally break through the wall that had formed between us. I was wrong, but I couldn't have imagined just how wrong. Christmas morning dawned cold and snowy, the kind of day Sarah used to say felt like being inside a snow globe. I woke up early, excited despite my apprehension. I prepared Sarah's special cinnamon rolls, packed the carefully wrapped presents, and even put on the new sweater I'd bought specifically for the occasion. The drive to Michael and Amanda's house took longer than usual due to the heavy snowfall. Christmas music played on the radio as I rehearsed upbeat conversation topics in my head, determined to make this visit pleasant for everyone. As I turned onto their street lined with large homes decorated with professional holiday displays, I noticed several cars parked in and around their driveway. Luxury vehicles I recognized as belonging to Amanda's parents and some of their colleagues from the law firm. My stomach tightened. No one had mentioned a gathering. I parked my 10-year-old sedan a little way down the street, not wanting to block anyone. Gathering the presents and homemade food, I made my way carefully up the unshoveled walkway to their front door. Through the large bay windows, I could see a Christmas tree with piles of presents and people milling about with champagne glasses. My hands were full when I reached the door, so I nudged the doorbell with my elbow. Through the frosted glass, I saw movement, and then Michael opened the door. His face fell immediately upon seeing me. "Dad? What are you doing here?" he asked, keeping the door mostly closed and blocking the entrance with his body. "It's Christmas," I said, confused by the question. "I brought presents for Emily and you both." Michael glanced nervously over his shoulder. "We didn't discuss you coming today, but it's Christmas." I repeated the packages, growing heavy in my arms as the cold wind bit through my clothes. "We always spend Christmas together." Michael's face hardened. "Things change, Dad. We have guests. I can just drop these off then," I offered, trying to peek around him to catch a glimpse of my granddaughter. "Is Emily opening presents? I'd love to see her for just a minute." That's when Amanda appeared behind Michael, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Is there a problem, honey?" she asked, though her eyes showed she knew exactly what was happening. "My dad showed up unannounced," Michael explained, as if I were a stranger. "Oh," Amanda said with exaggerated surprise. "We're in the middle of our family Christmas, Dennis. Perhaps you could have called first." "Family Christmas." I repeated the words, hitting me like physical blows. I am family. Michael straightened his shoulders, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before when he looked at me. Shame. Not shame for his actions, but shame of me. "Dad," he said firmly, "you're not our family anymore. Please go away." The world seemed to stop. Behind Michael, I caught Amanda's satisfied smirk. Further inside, I could see Amanda's parents watching the scene unfold, along with several other guests who had paused their celebrations to witness my humiliation. The strange thing was how calm I felt in that moment. The pain was there, crushing and absolute, but alongside it was a sudden clarity. Everything I had suspected but denied for years was confirmed in that single moment of rejection. "I understand," I said quietly, nodding once. Without another word, I turned and walked back to my car, the presents still in my arms. As I placed the gifts carefully on the passenger seat, I realized I wasn't going to cry. Not yet. First, I needed to make a call. Sitting in my car outside Michael's house, I watched snowflakes accumulate on the windshield as I tried to process what had just happened. The gifts I'd spent months preparing sat beside me, suddenly meaningless. The family recipe cinnamon rolls were growing cold in their container. I stared at the presents, the photo album I'd compiled with pictures of Michael. Growing up, my father's watch I had planned to pass down to him, the antique doll I'd restored for Emily. All representations of a connection that Michael had just severed with 11 cruel words. For the past decade, I'd been making excuses for my son's behavior. I'd blamed Amanda's influence, convinced myself that Michael was just busy with his career and new family. I'd accepted every slight, every canceled plan, every criticism of my home, my clothes, my way of life. I had given them my retirement savings without complaint. I'd changed my appearance, my habits, even the way I spoke to try to fit into their world. I'd followed every rule Amanda created for seeing my granddaughter. And still, it wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. But in that moment of clarity, I realized something important. I had been a good father. I had sacrificed everything for Michael after Sarah died. I had supported him emotionally and financially, celebrated his successes, and loved him unconditionally. The failure in our relationship wasn't mine. With shaking hands, not from sadness but from resolve, I pulled out my phone and called Frank, Sarah's brother. Frank and I had always been close even after Sarah passed. He was the uncle who showed up for every one of Michael's graduations, who taught him to ride a bike when my work schedule prevented it. "Merry Christmas, Dennis," Frank answered cheerfully. "Frank," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Something's happened." I explained the situation, recounting the scene at Michael's door with as much composure as I could manage. As I spoke, Frank's holiday cheer transformed into stunned silence, then outrage. "That's impossible," he said. "Michael told everyone you refused their invitation. He told Sarah's entire family you were spending Christmas with some woman you'd met and didn't want to be bothered with family obligations." This revelation hit me hard. Not only had I been excluded, but Michael had lied to cover it up. "What?" I managed to ask. "We've all been worried about you thinking you were pulling away. Sarah's mother has been heartbroken thinking you didn't want to see the family anymore." After hanging up with Frank, I immediately called my sister Mary. Unlike me, Mary had always seen through Amanda's facade. She had warned me years ago that Amanda was isolating Michael from his family. "I knew something wasn't right," Mary said after I explained what happened. "Michael barely returns my calls anymore, and when I asked about visiting Emily, he said you were already taking up their allotted family time each month." "I see her for maybe an hour once a month if I'm lucky," I admitted. Mary was silent for a moment. "Dennis, this isn't just Amanda anymore. Michael is a grown man making his own choices. You need to stop protecting him from the consequences of those choices." She was right. For years, I'd been enabling Michael's behavior by accepting it. By never standing up for myself, I had taught him it was okay to treat me this way. "What are you going to do?" Mary asked. "Nothing," I said. "I'm not calling him. I'm not begging for a place in his life anymore." "Good," Mary said firmly. "It's about time." Before hanging up, Frank's words echoed in my ear. "Don't worry, Dennis, I'm calling everyone right now. In 5 minutes, every person at that party will know exactly what happened today." For the first time in years, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. I had spent so long trying to fit into Michael and Amanda's world that I had forgotten to maintain my own dignity. No more. The aftermath of that Christmas day unfolded in ways I never could have anticipated. I drove home through the snowy streets, the gifts still beside me, and prepared for a solitary holiday dinner. I wasn't hungry, but the routine of cooking gave me something to focus on besides the ache in my chest. I had just put a small ham in the oven when my phone began ringing. First it was Sarah's cousin Judith, then her childhood friend Susan. Next came calls from my old firefighter buddies' neighbors and even distant relatives who had heard what happened. Word travels fast in families, especially when the news is shocking. Each caller expressed disbelief and support. Several admitted they had been confused by Michael's stories about me becoming distant and refusing family gatherings. The picture became clearer with each conversation. For years, Michael and Amanda had been systematically lying about me to everyone we knew. Around 6 o'clock, Frank called again. "You won't believe what's happening," he said, sounding almost gleeful despite the circumstances. "I called everyone in the family and told them what really happened today." Then Sarah's cousin Judith, who was actually at the party with her husband, confronted Michael in front of everyone. According to Frank, several guests had immediately gathered their things and left, including Amanda's uncle Robert, who had always spoken highly of firefighters after one saved his daughter from a car accident. Even more surprising, Amanda's father Thomas had pulled Michael aside for what appeared to be a very serious conversation. "Thomas looked furious," Frank reported. "Apparently he had no idea they'd been keeping you away from Emily or excluding you from family events. Amanda told her parents you weren't interested in being involved." I wasn't sure how to feel about this information. Part of me felt vindicated, but mostly I was sad that it had come to this public humiliation for the truth to emerge. Mary called next, insisting I come to her house for dinner, but I declined. I needed this time alone to process everything and decide what came next. For so long, my identity had been wrapped up in being Michael's father. Who was I now that he had rejected that relationship? That evening, I sat in my living room looking through old photo albums, pictures of Michael's childhood, his graduation, the camping trips we took every summer. I wrote a long letter that I never intended to send, pouring out years of hurt and confusion. The act of writing was cathartic, helping me organize thoughts I'd been suppressing. 2 days after Christmas, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, I was shocked to find Thomas, Amanda's father, standing on my porch. His expensive overcoat and polished shoes looked out of place against my modest home, but his expression wasn't condescending as I might have expected. Instead, he looked troubled. "May I come in, Dennis? I think we need to talk." I invited him inside, suddenly conscious of my simple furnishings and worn carpet. Thomas didn't seem to notice, sitting heavily on my couch with a sigh. "I owe you an apology," he began. "I had no idea what's been happening. The way Amanda described you, Well, it was very different from the man I'm meeting today. Thomas explained that Amanda had portrayed me as disinterested in Emily, frequently canceling visits and forgetting important dates. She claimed I was bitter about my station in life and constantly asking Michael for money. None of it was true, of course. I raised my daughter to respect people regardless of their background. Thomas said, genuine regret in his voice. My own father was a factory worker his entire life. I'm ashamed Amanda would treat you this way because of some perceived class difference. He revealed that he'd had a serious conversation with both Amanda and Michael, demanding they apologize and make amends. I told them both that this behavior reflects poorly on our entire family. We're not raised to treat people this way. After Thomas left, my phone rang. It was Michael, but not with the apology I might have hoped for. Dad, why did you have to cause such a scene? You've embarrassed us in front of everyone. Christmas is ruined now. I realized then that my son truly didn't understand what he had done wrong. In his mind, I was still the problem. I ended the call quickly, more certain than ever that maintaining distance was the right decision. Over the following weeks, I began rebuilding my life without the constant worry of trying to please Michael and Amanda. I joined a retired firefighters club that met weekly for breakfast. I signed up for cooking classes at the community center, something I'd always wanted to try. Frank helped me find a part-time job at a sporting goods store that specialized in fishing equipment. The work was enjoyable, the extra money helped replenish some of my depleted savings, and it gave me purpose again. Most importantly, I connected with a support group for older adults experiencing family estrangement. Hearing others' stories helped me understand I wasn't alone, and the coping strategies they shared proved invaluable. 3 months passed without contact from Michael. Then, a letter arrived in my mailbox. I recognized his handwriting immediately, and my heart raced as I opened it. The contents, however, were disappointing. While Michael acknowledged that Christmas Day was handled poorly, he spent most of the letter explaining why their actions were justified and how I had contributed to the situation by never understanding their lifestyle. I wrote back a brief, clear response. When you're ready to sincerely apologize and acknowledge what you did wrong, I'll always be open to reconciliation. But I will no longer accept being treated like an unwelcome stranger who doesn't deserve respect. I love you, but I also love myself enough to require basic decency. I didn't expect a response and I didn't receive one, but something had changed inside me. I was no longer waiting by the phone hoping for my son's attention. I was living my life for myself again. 6 months after that fateful Christmas, on a warm June evening, Mary called with news that left me speechless. Dennis, I just heard from cousin Judith. Amanda has left Michael. She took Emily and is filing for full custody. According to Mary, this marriage had been deteriorating for months. After the Christmas incident, Thomas had distanced himself professionally from Michael, withdrawing from several projects they had been working on together. Without Thomas's influence, Michael's position at the firm became precarious. Apparently, Mary continued, Amanda couldn't handle the downgrade in lifestyle, as she put it. She's moved back in with her parents temporarily. While I felt a deep sadness for my son, I didn't immediately reach out. Experience had taught me that unsolicited help would likely be rejected, and I needed Michael to understand some fundamental truths about respect and relationships before we could rebuild ours. 2 weeks later, Michael appeared at my door unannounced. The confident, polished lawyer was gone, replaced by an exhausted, unshaven man who looked years older than his age. His expensive clothes were wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed from either lack of sleep or crying, possibly both. "Dad," he said simply, his voice breaking on that single syllable. I invited him in without hesitation. Whatever had happened between us, he was still my son. We sat at the kitchen table where we'd shared countless meals over the years. For several minutes, Michael couldn't speak, just stared at his hands. Finally, the words came pouring out. "I've lost everything, Dad. Amanda's gone. She's taking Emily. The firm is pushing me out. I don't know what to do." Then came the words I'd been waiting years to hear. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for how I treated you. You were the only person who ever loved me unconditionally, and I threw that away for people who abandoned me the minute things got difficult." Michael explained how Amanda had gradually convinced him that my simple lifestyle was something to be ashamed of, that maintaining their social status required distancing themselves from my blue-collar influence. He admitted to lying to family members about me declining invitations and to deliberately scheduling events when he knew I couldn't attend. "I let her dictate everything," he confessed. "Even who could be part of our family. I can't believe I told you that you weren't family anymore. How could I have said that to the person who sacrificed everything for me?" I listened without interrupting, allowing Michael to fully express his regret. When he finished, I didn't immediately offer forgiveness. That would come later with time and consistent changed behavior. "I love you, Michael. That has never changed. But love doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. If we're going to rebuild our relationship, it needs to be based on mutual respect. Michael nodded, understanding that reconciliation would be a process, not an instant fix. Over the following weeks, I helped Michael find a good lawyer to ensure fair visitation rights with Emily. We started slowly with short dinners where conversation was sometimes awkward but always honest. Eventually, we began fishing again, something we hadn't done together in years. Gradually, I saw glimpses of the son I remembered. His humbling experience had stripped away the pretension and status consciousness that Amanda had cultivated. He returned to the core values I had raised him with: honesty, hard work, and treating others with dignity regardless of their background. 1 year after that painful Christmas rejection, my home was filled with family for a holiday celebration. Michael was there with Emily now, an energetic 4-year-old who called me Grandpa with easy affection. Frank and his wife brought their famous apple pie. Mary and her husband hosted a light-hearted gift exchange. The house was warm with conversation and laughter. During a quiet moment, Michael handed me a small, carefully wrapped package. Inside was my father's watch, the one I had intended to give him the previous Christmas. He had found it among the returned gifts and had it professionally restored. "I want you to keep this for now," Michael said. "Maybe someday when I've earned it back, you can pass it to me the way you intended." As I look back on that difficult journey, I realized the most valuable gift wasn't the watch or even having my son back in my life. It was learning that self-respect isn't selfishness. It's the foundation for any healthy relationship. Sometimes you have to be willing to walk away from people who don't value you, even when they're family. And sometimes the most difficult phone call you'll ever make turns out to be the most important one. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family members who weren't treating you right? How did you handle it, and did your relationship eventually improve? Leave a comment below and share your experience. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life lessons. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that true family is built on respect and unconditional love, not obligation.